Oh yeah, yeah, pretty. Yep, you got your side strokes out, and yeah, definitely you got it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, yeah, and then just it starts to
So
get you flipping a little bit, adding that dolphin
yeah,
nose.
I'm not there yet with the flips. Sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. But
Yeah, so that's
yeah.
definitely something that you can.
Yeah, I've been trying to do the ribbons, but I get muddy really quick. So I know there's something that I'm not quite. I think I pushed too hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just leaning. I think I'm pushing back or forward too much.
Well, that's very good eye. Yes, you definitely got to keep an eye on little things like that. If you're not getting, if you go too forward, you're probably going to get too much of the one color that's in the front. If you back up a little bit more, you might end up dragging a little bit more, not on a nice chisel, right?
Yeah, I get too much of the dark color. The dark color takes over too fast. So I
Yeah.
think I'm leaning towards myself too much.
Yes, and then you're going to drag your chisel with the thick part of it more.
I'm going to move my camera. I hope it doesn't make it too busy.
Yeah, so you're good that you're aware of something's happening, and definitely when you see the dark coming behind it and you've got the light in front, then you should be getting light following on top, right? So if you're pulling it towards you, or you would turn your brush around so that whatever you want dominant will show up, right? So it depends on how your ability is. Some people can push a stroke forward easier than pulling it down, right? So when you're pulling it down, yeah, you definitely got to try and get right up and down, straight up and down. If you're on the drag, then see how thick that line becomes, because you're pushing down on it. If you were over directing and you were a little bit, then you probably would only get all the white, because you're just tickling the paper with maybe 3/4 of the brush, and you're not even touching down with the red. So if you come too far directed towards yourself, yeah, you're going to end up very thick, right? So you definitely want to come and tickle, and if anything, you're going to be this way more, like over directed away from you, so then you will get a little bit more lighter color showing. So when you go and pull down just a little bit, and then you're going to just slightly push, and that all depends on how fat you want to do it. If you want to make them skinny, or if you really want to make them fat, you're going to put a lot of pressure. But if you want to make them skinny, then again, you're only going to put them little pressure. And you're always going to run out of paint down, eventually, right? You got to really make sure you got lots of paint. So then when you're pushing down, you got the paint loaded higher up on your brush, and then you still got yourself, loaded in a nice way where you're flattening out your brush and getting that nice point on your brush so that you can get that real skinny line. Push over, really tickle, 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 slowly pushing over to the other side. Right, so it depends on how long and skinny you want them. If you do it faster and you're doing more layering, it's going to be more like ribbony. But if you take your time and really stretch it out, they're going to be really long and skinny. Right, you see how fast I kind of went right away before even finishing the stroke? So definitely that makes it more ribbony. And then depends on how fat you want to make them. It's a really fun exercise to play with, to loosen you up, before you start any project, is getting those ribbons played with. And then when you're doing that,
Right off the bat, get my brushes like squished together right off the bat.
maybe just because you're on paper, how's the feel of the thickness of your paint? Do you need just a slight bit of medium?
It's brand new paint. I just opened both of the bottles.
And how's the chisel on your brush?
Pretty buttery.
How's the chisel on your brush before you start?
Pretty good.
Yeah. And then if you just tickle, you get a nice line like that.
Yeah, I can do it pretty thin.
Yeah. So it's just learning how to tickle the surface. And slowly add pressure as you're leaning over.
It might be because I'm using my 12 and I'm not a bigger brush.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter because even when you start getting down to those size 10s and smaller flowers, if you wanted to make your pansy a little bit smaller, that's why I have here 10. Okay, so as long as your brush is happy and nice chisel on it. They just won't be so big. Okay, so I use my pinky sometimes too to help brace myself so that I have it's called a fulcrum finger in the nail industry.
Yeah.
Right, so definitely I like to use that. And then just tickle, push over, slide slightly. And then if you notice that your brush is kind of not sliding nicely, maybe you are pushing a little too hard. So it should stay in form, right? Instead of separating on you. Right, so sometimes it should move together as a nice uniform, not kind of moving like that, because I know when I was trying to go really slow, I was noticing that happening a little bit with my brush. Right, so hopefully you got enough slip. That's why I was saying you might need just a little tiny bit of floating medium. And then a lot of times when I'm doing anything like this, don't be afraid to go back in, right, and add to it. So it's really good to practice joining in where you left off. Right, so I run out of paint, so I'm gonna join in, feather really lightly into my stroke, and then pull more, right? So a lot of times you're gonna start running out of paint, so definitely don't be afraid to keep adding on. Like if you really wanted to make a really long ribbon, then just know that your brush is only gonna probably do maybe 3 before it starts to run out of paint. See, it starts to gets draggy. Then I'm going to come over, grab some more fresh paint from my plate, carry on, fix that last stroke before I carry on. So yeah, I'm dragging, ran out of paint. So I just need a little bit more red than I was putting before. Right, and then I can make that ribbon as long as I want, but I usually about 3 times. 2 successfully for sure. And then by the time you get to that third one, you're starting to run out of paint. Does that make sense, maybe, too? We're trying to do too long of a ribbon all in one stroke.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely love your questions because even I can record all day a million times about the same subject and maybe not always come up with the same answers that I do live. So I definitely love when you guys meet me here on Zoom. The more you play, and definitely after a couple weeks vacation, you'll have to warm up a little bit and do some daisies and play around with your liner brush and, get that dancing feel where you're up on the chisel and then back down into pressure. And the more you keep playing with that kind of thing to loosen yourself up before you start to do any kind of full flower, it's like a little warm up, right? We need to kind of remind ourselves sometimes. When I'm doing my flower, you don't always have to do it in one stroke, and because a lot of times it will be muddy by the time you get here, so I like to go back in the second time on its own to fix that. And then you can only flip in one direction, so if you really want your flower to flip on both sides, you gotta add that. You definitely gotta add that little dolphin nose in separately. right?
Yeah.
So you can only do one side with a finished stroke. Like if you want to do it all in one stroke, then you can successfully kind of do one side. But sometimes with those pansies, we definitely nice to have it really curly and come in. Or the side petals, right? Again, most times if you're starting at the top, you're going to be curling it from the bottom. But the pansy definitely has more curl on the top. Right, so a lot of times we're going to layer 2 petals here for that pansy, but the top one will have a nice curl on it. And it'll be on the top side of the flower. And so this side, again, you know, it just helps to give the eye from the stroke if you start from top to bottom, because of all your little wiggles, right? It gives it direction. Because you can actually see a right-handed stroke and a left-handed stroke. You can see the wiggles change direction. So the more you play around with starting from the top and curling it under, and then coming in and add your little flip after on the top of your pansy, right? So that's the little dolphin nose. And this dolphin nose definitely will evolve and change and get fancier, and you're going to keep playing and adding more to it, especially when you get to the roses. So that's why I like introducing you guys to the dolphin nose in the pansy class, because by the time you get to the roses, then you're going to feel a lot more comfortable doing them. So yeah, that's a really good topic for tonight. Thank you, Penny.
You're welcome.
Yeah, always here to help. I think you're very close. You just you know, again, meeting with me is gonna definitely troubleshoot anything that you're having a little problem. And then your practice hopefully will progress a lot faster too.